Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I too attended the service last Sunday in memory of those that died at London Bridge, and I'd like to put on record my thanks to Southwark Cathedral and the Borough of Southwark for all the work they put into that, and of course thanking all our emergency services that keep us safe all the year round. And yesterday I was able to give that in person to the Fire Brigades Union Conference in Brighton and thank them for the work that they do to keep us all safe. Last month, Mr. Speaker, the Brexit Secretary promised, and I quote, a detailed, ambitious and precise white paper on the government's negotiating position. Will it be published in advance of the EU withdrawal debate next week?
Prime Minister.
I say to the right honourable gentleman, first of all, that I would also echo the comments he made about the work our emergency services do day in and day out to keep us safe. And I think everybody across this House recognises that, and we are all grateful to them for the dedication that they show. Yes, my right honourable friend, the Brexit Secretary, and I agree that we want to publish a white paper that goes beyond the speeches, that goes beyond the speeches and the papers that have been given and published so far, that does go into more details, and that ensures that when we publish that white paper, we are able to negotiate with our European Union and European Commission colleagues on that, on the basis that this is an ambitious offer from the United Kingdom for an ambitious trade deal and security partnership in the future.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Well, the question was a very simple one, actually. It was when will this white paper be published? Because next week we'll be debating the most important piece of legislation for a very long time, and we still have not seen the government's negotiating position. So can the Prime Minister at least assure the House that not only will the white paper be published ahead of the crucial June EU summit, but also there will be an opportunity to debate it in this House ahead of the summit?
The right honourable gentleman talks about the vote that is going to take place in this House next week in the EU withdrawal bill. And indeed, those votes will be important. They will be important to show our commitment to do what the British people have asked us to do, which is to leave the European Union. And if he's talking about clarity and ahead of those votes, perhaps the right honourable gentleman would take this opportunity of doing what he refused to do when I asked him last time in Prime Minister's questions, which is to stand up.
Order! Mr Yassin, calm yourself. You're normally a model of calm and repose. Relax, there's a long way to go. Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Perhaps the right honourable gentleman would like to take the opportunity of doing what he refused to do 2 or 3 weeks ago in this chamber, which is to stand up and rule out a second referendum.
Jeremy Corbyn!
Mr. Speaker, the last time I looked at the order paper, it said Prime Minister's question time. And we were told, Mr. Speaker, 3 weeks ago, to a great deal of fanfare, that this document, this white paper, would set out the government's ambition for the UK's future relationship with the EU and their vision for a future role in the world. It's nowhere to be seen. No answer is there as to when it will be published. 4 weeks ago, the Prime Minister did confirm that the Cabinet was looking at 2 options for a future customs arrangement with the EU, a customs partnership model and a maximum facilitation option. Can the Prime Minister now tell us which of her subcommittees has met, what decisions they've made, when they're going to report to the Cabinet, and will we be told about it?
Prime Minister!
Can I say to the right honourable gentleman that we have already set out our ambition for our future relationship with the European Union, but crucially, what we are doing as a government is delivering on the vote of the British people, which is to leave the European Union. And I know that the right honourable gentleman, I didn't ask him a question. I simply suggested that he could stand up and say what the Labour Party policy was on a second referendum. If he wants to enter this debate next week in the right spirit, then he will do just that and rule out a second referendum.
Jeremy Corbyn!
Speaker, it's not the opposition that are conducting the negotiations. Very sadly, Mr. Speaker, it's not the government either. Last week, the Brexit Secretary put forward yet another new plan, including a 10-mile buffer zone in Northern Ireland. Is that now the government's option?
Prime Minister.
To the right honourable gentleman, we are looking at a number of. We're looking at the two options for the customs model. Both of those will do what we have committed to do, which is to ensure that we deliver no hard border in Northern Ireland, and we have been very clear in the December joint report about what that means. It also means that we ensure that there is no border between Great Britain and Northern Ireland, no border down the Irish Sea as the European Union proposed, and that is why we are putting forward alternative proposals to the European Union in relation to that issue, and we continue to negotiate with the European Union on all of the issues that need to be addressed before we actually bring legislation before this House for withdrawal agreement and implementation bill. And I say to the right honourable gentleman, that when we look at what is going to the important debate that will take place in this House next week, because it is an important debate that will show the sincerity of this House to deliver on the vote of the British people to leave the European Union.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Mr. Speaker, we've had no answer on the White Paper, and I don't think we've had an answer on the buffer zone, but I could say the one thing the buffer zone proposal has achieved is bringing just about everybody in Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland together, and it was described by the Irish Chamber of Commerce, who said the idea is bonkers. So can the Prime Minister confirm that it remains her plan to leave the European Union in March 2019 and complete the transition by December 2020?
Prime Minister.
Yes.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I look at the faces behind her and they're not all of one on this matter. The Right Honourable Member for Ashford doesn't share her certainty. He said there will be a transition period that will follow her implementation period. Mr. Speaker, when it comes to Brexit, this government has delivered more delays and more cancellations than Northern Rail. The government's white paper is delayed, its customs proposals have been cancelled, and it's ripped up its own timetable, just like our shambolic privatised railways. This government's incompetence threatens our economy, businesses, jobs and our communities. So my question to the Prime Minister is this: which will last longer, the Northern Rail franchise or her premiership?
I say to the right honourable gentleman that if he's not willing to stand up in this House and talk about the Labour Party policy on Europe, we actually learned a little today from the shadow Brexit Secretary about the Labour Party's policy on Europe, where he made clear that it was a pretence. And I quote, a pretence that somehow everybody in the Labour Party is in the same place on this. So now we know what the right honourable gentleman is. Labour voted for a referendum. They voted to trigger Article 50. And since then, they have tried to frustrate the Brexit process at every stage. Their MEPs voted against moving on to negotiate the trade discussions. They voted against the withdrawal bill. Today we saw again they are refusing to rule out a second referendum. The British people voted to leave the European Union, and it is this government that is delivering on the vote of the British people.